afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicole Malzin with Engagebay. Today, we're very excited to continue our interview series where we sit down with influential names in marketing and sales. For this episode, our guest is return on relationships expert and author of Age of Influence, Ted Rubin. While Ted doesn't really need any introduction, he dons many hats and is a widely regarded influencer. He's also one of the most popular and loved social marketing strategists in the history of social marketing strategy. Ted is one of the most followed CMOs on Twitter, according to Social Media Marketing Magazine. He's one of the most interesting CMOs on Twitter, according to Say Media. Number 13 on Forbes' top 50 social media power influencers. And number 2 on the lead tail list of top 25 people most mentioned by digital marketers. So, without further ado, here is Ted Rubin. How are you, Ted? How are you doing?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. All right, we'll get started with the first question. I know you were born in New York and you're based in Florida now, correct?
I am based in Pompano Beach, Florida. That's correct. I moved down there about 2.5 years ago.
So how's the journey been from getting to New York to Florida?
Well, okay. So here I am. I'm a guy that grew up in the East Coast. I'm born to a Jewish family in Long Island. Florida is kind of second nature to me. If you know, everyone used to say, why does everybody move to Florida when you're young? You think about it, and then you get older and you realize because it's warmer and it's nicer and there's no state taxes and there's all these things. So for me, I have been back and forth to Florida most of my life. I mean, again, a lot of East Coasters go up and down the East Coast. And then the last few years, my parents retired down there. And when they were ill or, aging, I started going down a little bit more to be with them. I was really also down there. So I got very accustomed to being there on a regular basis before I moved. So this was not like let's look at the map. Let's look at this great place to move. It was a place I was very comfortable in. I have a lot of friends down there. I have a lot of friends. I've lived down there at different points of my life. So the transition for me has been really easy. Plus, I travel a lot. I have a lot of friends in different places. So I'm not like stuck in wherever it is I'm at. I get to move around a lot, just like it's kind of hot in Florida in the summer. So here I am up in Long Island and the Northeast for the next 6 or 7.
Okay. Well, speaking of the Northeast, I know you graduated from Cornell with a degree in business and economics. What were your plans when you graduated? Were you thinking about marketing at the time?
I was not thinking about marketing. So, I grew up like a lot of young kids. It was also a little different time. I grew up in a very middle-class community, and, I had my eyes on the city. I had my eyes on bigger and better things. So I wanted to sell something. I wanted to do something where I could make a lot of money. School I enjoyed. I probably should have gone to grad school, but for me, I couldn't wait to get out. And the best avenue for me at the time was I jumped into the investment. It gave me a lot of money at a young age. It gave me the opportunity to do what I do best, which is build relationships with people, communicate with people. I didn't really look at it the same way I do now. I didn't understand it as something that is a basic part of me and a need. I just knew that I was good at it. I made friends wherever I went. It's funny. People a lot of times come back to me are I push myself to get out there. But what I always do is I tend to make a few good relationships everywhere I go. I'm not the guy that knows everybody. And walks out knowing everyone. But every job I've ever been at, every school I've ever gone to, any organization I've ever been a part of, I've always left with at least 1 or 2 very strong relationships. And so for me at Cornell, it was like get out, get into some place, do something where you can meet a lot of people and kind of do what you're best at. So I jumped into the investment business, and I thrived at it. I enjoyed it. But it was very, very hard driving. It was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. I learned very quickly after a few years. I opened up my own business, worked crazy hours, had a lot of employees at a young age, and kind of burnt myself out. The market turned in the late 80s. It made for a really difficult time. And, I kind of abandoned it and moved on. And just I spent some time in Florida. And it was after that where I initially went back to my roots, which was sales, because I had kind of gotten past it.
Mm-hmm.
Sales was the way I started, but of course, once you own a company, you've got to do everything. You've got to do the marketing. You've got to run the business. You got to pay the bills. I went back to my roots and I started building sales teams. But I got bored of that, and I got very, very fortunate. I discovered the internet in 1997 when I was looking for a new opportunity. I was living in Florida at the time. I was married. I had 2 young children. And I read an interview of Seth Godin,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fascinating. You know, he was one of the first guys to jump into the digital space and start doing things that nobody else had done. He wasn't simply taking a magazine and putting it online or putting a catalog online and calling it e-commerce. He was figuring out what motivates people and how you get them to do things. The company was called Yo-Yo9. And at the end of the interviewer said to him, well, Seth, this company sounds really interesting. Do you have any job openings? And he said, well, I don't have any specific openings, but number one, I always hire smart people. So if I find someone smart, I find a place for them. And number two is I need people that can sell anything, selling something that no one has ever sold before. And I'm having trouble finding people that know how to do it. So I wrote him a letter, an actual letter, with a copy of my resume, and I wrote it up, and I basically said, I'm smart and I can sell anything. And lo and behold, 9 days later, I got a message from my wife, who's my ex-wife now at work, saying, oh my God, they called. And I flew up to New York. I met with the team. I met with Seth. We could probably spend a whole whole hour on that. I ended up getting into the digital space, and it was initially in sales, but that's where I really got exposure to Seth. Now, Seth, if you know who he is now, probably the most
Of
well-read
course.
marketer in the world. This was early on. He hadn't even written his first bestseller, Permission Marketing, yet.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up with all these theories about how marketing is going to change and how it's all about customers giving permission and how the internet's going to change everything. And I was very fortunate. I was there to hear it all. And, kind of a funny story. I left my wife and my 2 little girls at home because this was a new thing. Go up, see how it works out. We decided to move back up to New York. They had to sell the house. My oldest was in preschool, and my ex wanted her to finish the year. And I made a critical error of moving in with my in-laws. Don't ever move in. Okay. I really didn't have a choice at the time. I was starting a new thing. I still had my whole home and overhead in Florida. They're like, oh, we have a bedroom. Come on up. But, especially, by the way, don't move in with them if they're like the Costanzas. I don't know if you watch Seinfeld.
Yeah.
All they do is scream at each other. But, I believe everything happens for a reason. And I'm not an early riser, but because of the way they'd wake up in the morning and the fighting would start immediately, I just wanted to get out of the house. So I left the house every morning by 6 a.m. And I got to the office, Yo-Yo9, early. And as it turns out, Seth is an early riser. And we were the only 2 in the office. And Seth was coming up with all these ideas and he was writing these articles. And I was the guy that he was sitting there talking to about it. And I realized, shut up and listen. I knew very little about this. I was there because I knew how to sell. And I got an incredible education at a time when very few people knew what to do with these platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And Seth was writing, he wrote the article, Permission Marketing, which was for Fast Company, which then became his first bestseller. He was talking about how ideas spread, which then became his book, The Idea Virus. And my concept of return on relationship was something that was more part of me than an idea that I could put on paper. But sitting there with him, a lot of it really became clear to me because it really played in with permission marketing is about building relationships with consumers. It's not about just saying, do I have your permission to market to you? It's about engaging with them. It's about hearing what's important to them. And then the permission isn't always a checkbox. The permission very often is they keep coming back to listen. They read your content. And I just got a wonderful education. So I think that answers your question. That's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's talk about another group you were involved with, which is Elf Cosmetics. How did that happen? And, how did you really get into, I know you did a lot of social media for them. So what do you think the impact of that was?
Well, okay, so 2 questions. How did it get started is a really cool question because I had moved through kind of the internet space. I left Yo-Yo9. I went to a company called Bottle Rocket that was a game maker, which was very big on the online at the time because it kept people coming back to sites. I moved from there to 800 Flowers. And then I left, and I was doing a series of consulting, working for different companies, and I was desperately looking for something new. I had run a company called The Black Book, which was a traditional advertising company that wanted to kind of segue themselves into the new space and make themselves relevant again. When this ELF opportunity came up, and the way it happened was two people that I'd known for many years knew that I was looking for something new, and both of them were helping ELF Cosmetics grow. It was a very young company,
Mm-hmm.
a few $1 million in sales. They were strictly online, and they had no dollars for a marketing budget. So everything they were doing was just kind of word of mouth. But at some point, they kind of hit a wall of magazine articles, the traditional word of mouth, people talking about it. And they were looking for someone to come in as a chief marketing officer, but they needed someone that had a very, very strong sales background, because it couldn't be marketing just for the long term. It had to be generating sales right up front. They needed someone to be the face of the brand. And fortunately, these two friends of mine, one who was doing marketing for them and one who was doing email marketing for them, said, we know this guy, he's got a strong sales background and he's got great ideas. He worked for Seth Godin, he worked for a number of other, up and coming companies. You should talk to him. And there was I was not even involved in social media at the time. I had just gotten online. I wasn't even on Twitter yet. I was on Facebook because it was out. And I met them, and they kind of made it clear to me when I asked them exactly what their goals were like, well, we want you to figure that out. How can you take us to the next level? We're going to keep doing what we do. We manufacture great product. We're doing some great email marketing. We're going to continue to grow a list, but what can we do without buying and competing with the major cosmetics companies that have hundreds of millions of dollars of budgets to throw ads out there? And I came in, and social media was just starting to grow, and I discovered Twitter. I started looking at everything else. MySpace was still around.
Oh, okay.
I looked at what these guys were doing in social, and I realized immediately that it was all wrong. They were using it as an advertising medium. They weren't understanding the engagement aspect of it. And for me, like, a world opened up, because here I am, a guy that believes in communicating with people, engaging people, but the only way I had to do it before these social media platforms was email, phone, going to events and meeting people face to face, which can be very costly, very time consuming. And how many people can you meet at an event?
Yeah.
Really not thousands or tens of thousands or at a time. And I realized I needed help. And fortunately, I had a good network of people, and I reached out, and a couple of guys I know. One of them is a gentleman by the name of Oz Sultan, S-U-L.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that Oz kind of has a handle on these things. He's got some great ideas. And they were young in the space. They were not getting big jobs with big brands. So I was able to bring them in more for the opportunity than for the revenue they were going to create, because here I was at a brand that had no legal team, that had no rules. Basically, a family, a father and a son owners, who said, if it works, you can do anything you want. And the big brands were afraid of social media. They were afraid of what their employees might say. They were even afraid of what their chief marketing officer would say, where it gets spread out immediately overnight. So I had this great opportunity to build a brand using social media, and I did. I jumped into Twitter in a big way. I realized the opportunity for syndication, for sharing content, for communicating with consumers. I shut down all their platforms for about 3 months while I kind of studied it and met with these people and thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was investigating, I realized that these guys already had a social presence, like many brands do, that they weren't even aware of, because Nicole was talking about them, Lori was talking about them. They were writing things about them, but it wasn't on their platforms. It was on their own. It was on the people's Twitter. It was on their Facebook. It was on their MySpace. And I decided that this was something I desperately wanted to leverage. And then the big thing was, I asked them if they had any YouTube videos about them. And they said, oh yeah, there might be about 5 or 10. In one night, I found 500 videos.
Oh, wow.
But what's really unique about YouTube is that it isn't a traditional search engine. What you tend to find, the more links you click on, the more links you tend to find. You click on a video, and then all of a sudden many more appear. And I realized that there were women all over America talking about ELF. And it was incredibly unique and honest feedback. Oh my God, I got my cosmetics. Look at it. Look at what it looks like on me, and they're printing themselves. And I realized that we had this amazing opportunity. And again, I went to the owners because I wasn't really, I was still new. I wasn't sure what they'd accept. And I'm telling them about this and kind of my idea. And they're like, as long as it doesn't cost more than this, do whatever you want. So I created I created one of the first sites that curated other people's content. You know, but it was early on and we were nervous. There weren't a lot of filters. We weren't sure what would appear. So instead of sucking it into Elf Cosmetics site, we set up a separate URL called Ask Elf.
Okay.
And what we did there was we aggregated any content where Elf was mentioned. So tweets, Facebook posts, YouTube videos. And we very quickly started letting all the people know, and we started building the social media presence. And it was very unique because me as the CMO would answer tweets. I would answer Facebook posts. I hired people to answer every single comment. Nobody was doing this in 2008. Nobody. They were all terrified. They, don't answer anybody. Don't say anything. We might get in trouble. We might say the wrong thing. And here we are with this small brand with a product that women were just raving about. Mostly because of how inexpensive it was and that they weren't breaking out from it. It wasn't crap. And they were talking about us and we were engaging with them. So our social media presence kind of grew like wildfire. In 2009, we had the largest social media presence for a cosmetics brand, against the likes of Sephora and Estee Lauder, mostly because they just weren't there.
Yeah.
And we started engaging with these people. Now, I also realized early on that it seemed to me that people that were winning in social were the people that were engaging, not trying to sell. And most of the people that were in there were simply using it to post ads, to post discount codes. And I became very, very protective of our social media presence. I mean, every week, the owners would call me in and go, okay, well, we had 1,000 followers last week. We have 2,000 followers this week. When are we going to start selling them something? I'm like, we're not selling them anything yet. I want to become known as a brand that communicates with people. And what we did do, though, is we used our social presence to keep driving our email list, where we were happy to sell products, to offer discounts. That's what our email list was all about.
Mm-hmm.
We also had a separate blog early on called Ask a Shell, who is our creative director, Shell Dunaway.
Okay.
And she was in her 20s. She moved to New York to work for Elf. She would go out on the weekends and search for bargains. And we learned very quickly that if you didn't just sell stuff and if you didn't just talk about cosmetics, that people were coming back. And Michelle talked about her life. She talked about living in New York as a single girl. And we built a huge following of people who, of course, then would write in and go, Michelle, you look beautiful. What are you using? Well, I'm using Elf Cosmetics. How do you do that? And then we started sharing all these videos. And we would, like any cosmetics firm, we did have a budget to make really professional beauty videos of how to do smoky eyes, or how to put on your blush. And we found that we got exponentially more referral traffic from the ones made by Nicole, by Lori, by a mom at home with 2 kids grabbing at her arm, making her shaky video, because people related to it because it was real. And I like to say when I'm on stage, what woman in the audience, actually thinks that they're going to look like the stars who are on stage, who are putting on makeup? But you do feel like you can look like your friend. You do feel like you can look like your coworker who's putting makeup on the train or in the car at a red light. And people related to that. So it was just a tremendous boon for Elf. Our sales blew up. Our social presence blew up. And then we came to the attention of some of the big retailers that they had no success at getting into in the earlier days. And we got an opportunity to have a Christmas promotion with Target in 600 of their stores as a test. I got 600 blog posts written about it by mom bloggers around the country.
Oh, wow.
4 weeks before Christmas, they were sold out nationwide.
Nice.
There was nothing left. So when the holiday came around, those few weeks before, there was nothing there. And they had no ability to reorder because it wasn't set up that way. But come January, Elf became an inline, regular branded Target nationwide. And that was kind of the start of their tremendous growth. And since then, they've become a big brand at Walmart. They create products. They have their own stores. When I left, I joined, they probably had 5 million in sales. When I left 2.5 years later, we had 50 million in sales. That was back in 2010. Now they've gone public. I'm not exactly sure. I don't follow them day to day. I'm not sure what the valuation is right now, but I know they had about $1.25 billion valuation at one point. So it was very exciting. Now they're doing a lot more of traditional stuff, but their base, their history is all about connecting with consumers.
Okay, that was really fascinating. So we've come a long way with social media since 2008, where it's really pervasive today. Where do you see it going in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, isn't that the question everybody wants the answer to? I don't know. I think a lot of it has become overdone. Clearly, it's very crowded. There's a lot of people out there. But
Mm-hmm.
like any other medium or any other space, there are going to be the people that are always going to stand out, that are always going to do things that make people relate to them. So I think platforms are going to continue to evolve. Whether it really, it really doesn't matter whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, any of these platforms. It matters where the consumers are. So wherever they go, I think brands are learning that the world has changed, that they need transparency, that people want to know what their ingredients are, that people want to know if they're doing good for society. Are they a sustainable brand? Are they caring about their community? And whatever platform we go to, brands have realized that consumers are going to want answers. They're going to want engagement. They're going to want to be able to communicate with people at the brands and human beings. Now, here's where a big problem comes in. As the technology advances, and we see it advancing dramatically now, every brand, every business wants to figure out, how do we do this more efficiently?
Mm-hmm.
What ends up happening, unfortunately, with efficiency is you tend to get away from human interaction. Right? How can we just click a button? It tells us everybody that has a question. We can click another button. It gives them an answer. The problem is, I don't think that's what people want. So I think what's really going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years is, where is the cross going to come between efficiency and human engagement? How are we going to make efficiency and human engagement come together? How are we going to allow our employees to engage with our customers at an efficient level that still keeps it human? Because right now, I believe one of the biggest challenges facing brands is they need to create content at an astronomical pace. And if you do the math and you hire an agency to do that, it's unaffordable. So brands need to start to figure out how they're going to empower their employees, how they're going to create platforms, apps, other things that allow their employees to get involved in that process of marketing, engaging, and content creation. So to me, that's where it's going. It's why I'm the CMO and a partner in a company called Photofy, because Photofy is allowing brands a little bit of the control and a little bit of the oversight to allow their employees to create beautiful branded content in under 30 seconds in a way that they can see what's happening and they can lend the brand assets to the employee. A company like Dynamic Signal is out there letting employees share content for brands where it can be tracked by the brand and the brand can see what's happening, and the employees can have a safety valve of knowing that this is pre-approved content. They don't have to worry that they're going to have a problem because they talked about their company.
Okay. So which do you think it's better for companies to move towards, free social media or paid social media?
So I think it needs to be a mix of both. I think now there's different types of paid. What a lot of brands call paid social media is just advertising.
Mm-hmm.
You running an ad on Facebook is not social media. It's advertising in a social media environment. So it's called paid social media, but to me, it's really just advertising, which is fine. Like, for instance, I love a lot of Facebook ads when they're targeted correctly. They're really getting me at the right time. They see that I'm talking about, I'm going hiking in the mountains. They show me hiking boots. They show me equipment for that. It's very valuable. Or they know I'm speaking to Nicole about cosmetics. So they're saying something. Now that's sometimes where it crosses over, but I get it. I understand why they showed that to me. Sorry for the noise. I'm outside.
Oh, it's all good.
But look, free is always the best. First of all, it's not full. Let's recognize something. It takes time.
Yeah.
All the stuff I do is technically free, but it takes me hours and hours to do it, and it becomes my advertising and the way I build my brand. So it's just a way that I can do it. The beauty of it is I can do it without paying somebody else to do it for me. So I think the kind of paid social media we're talking about is influencers or people creating content for us or things we can share. And I think this value to that as long as there's a human side to it, as long as there's somebody that can communicate with people after they read that. So I think it's a mix. I don't think it's one or the other. But one of the ways I believe you can really leverage what we're calling free social media is by empowering your employees to build their own personal brands, share what they believe, what they love, what they're doing, share photos from work. I mean, let's talk about retail. Let's talk about food service. All these people in these stores should be sharing content. I mean, there are a lot of small businesses out there where if they hire salespeople, they want to know right away, do you have an Instagram? Are you comfortable on that? We want you to share content about the new clothes we get in, the new things we do, because they recognize a lot of their friends are going to be the customers.
Right.
And especially in food service, it's the same kind of thing. So I think it's going to be a mix between the two. I think in the future, what we're calling free now will outweigh what we're calling paid as companies get more comfortable with allowing their employees to share content.
Okay. And what else do you think a company can do to stand out on social media besides the great idea you had of just the employees sharing content?
Well, I think what's really important is becoming a brand that people know is paying attention. So, besides being honest, authentic, and real, which has a huge share of benefit, there's some other things that are really important. No matter what type of content you produce online, you're going to have competition. And someone else is producing content on the same topic. So you need more than just good information to stand out. Your audience wants to connect with real, living, breathing humans. And in my opinion, they'll be much more interested in what you have to say if you're authentic. Show some personality, crack some jokes if you're comfortable with it. Don't try to be perfect. Savvy content consumers can spot your intentions from a mile away, with an eye toward noticing the difference between honest opinion and a paid sales pitch. That's why, like, if you're using influencers, don't just use someone you pay, use someone that you know has already used your product. I'm much more of a believer in micro influencers, in your customers. I believe everyone influences someone. And we're all really, truly more influenced by our friends, not by, there are very few celebrities or big time influencers that can really move the needle. What you're buying there is advertising. You're buying content. You're buying people's eyeballs. But, savvy content consumers can spot your attentions. And the real value of content comes very much from the conversation that happens after the content is published through social channels and the comments section. So if you just parrot talking points from similar content, it's hard to stoke any real engagement. Some social influencers play things straight from the marketing 101 handbook, but the biggest stars are those who are comfortable expressing their opinions in their own way. So I think the way a brand can stand out is by empowering their employees to have conversations, allowing them to talk to people, content that's real, that's just not just formulaic. Then they allow them to engage those people. To me, that's the way you stand out. You become a brand that does that. You become a brand where people go, oh yeah, I know someone at Delta. They communicate with me every time I fly.
Okay. So is there a certain platform you think B2B businesses should focus on more than another?
Well, I think it's pretty clear these days that LinkedIn is probably that platform. You can make connections. The problem is, the way I see most people using LinkedIn is, again, they're sending out blast emails. They're sending people formulaic outreach. To me, that's a waste of time. Numbers games will always work to a certain degree. If you play the numbers game, what you end up forgetting about is, yes, you might make 3 sales, but you're probably going to piss off 300 people. And then the next time you come back to maybe the brand really is relevant to them. They're going to say, oh, those are the guys that spam me all the time on LinkedIn. I'm really not interested in doing business with them. So I think that with LinkedIn, create great content, reach out to people on a personal level. When I was in the investment business in college, I was taught to make X amount of calls a day. And X amount of calls would turn into X amount of prospects, to X amount of sales. And my manager had a lot of problems with me because I never made that amount of calls. Because I would end up talking to people for a lot longer than was required. So I wanted to make 300 calls a day. I couldn't talk to people for 20 minutes. There wasn't enough time in the day. As somebody that's concerned with it, that cares about it. I think the same holds with B2B marketing on LinkedIn. I think if you build relationships with people, if you let them know you're there for them, even when you're not selling them something, if you provide good content to them and when they comment or they come in, you actually engage with them. You don't just click the like button like if you like that comment, you reply to them, even if it's a thanks for jumping in. Because if I just keep writing about business, how many times are people going to engage with me?
Okay. So for B2B businesses, what if they kind of run out of ideas for what to post on social media? What would you recommend?
Okay, so the way I get most of I would recommend that they take their people, all their employees, but especially the people that are responsible, and have them regularly read other content. So most of my content comes from things I read from other people. And I get passionate
Okay.
about what they wrote. I'm either passionate that I agree with them or I'm passionate that I disagree with them. And then it's if you live in your closed bubble, work in your company, if you sit in the brainstorming sessions with all the people that you work with, your universe is so limited. So my advice to them is, look, I tell every company, whether they're in B2B or B2C, that every single person in the visiting the site of customers or of well-known blog writers or news sites every morning, at least 10, and going and seeing what are people writing about, what are they talking about, what do they care about, especially your customers. I mean, it's an opportunity to learn, to listen about what's important to them, and then develop content based on that.
Okay, that's really helpful. So let's talk a minute about one of your favorite quotes, which is life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. Why is that your favorite? Elaborate on it as much as you like.
Well, that's my favorite quote because I find that so many people wait for the perfect time. And I've had a lot of challenges in my life. And if every time I had a challenge, I waited till it was solved or was fixed or I was in a perfect spot to do something, whether it was new or try a new sport or write a new blog or share something on social media, nothing would ever come. And I've also learned that it feels like in life you go from one crisis to the next. And I'm using the word crisis very freely. But the crisis can be, oh my God, my child getting out of kindergarten and where are they going to go to school? The crisis can be my child gets colds every day and we're at the doctor and we can't figure it out. And it doesn't have to be a terrible illness or bankruptcy and things like that. And I find that people tend to put things off waiting for that to happen. And for me, I've learned that if I'm not dancing in the rain, I'm never going to be dancing. Because it goes towards my what I talk about, which is no let up. There's no let up in life. It goes from one thing to the next. You think you made enough money. Next thing you know, you need more. Everything's going well in your life, but one of your friends has a crisis, or a family member, or something's happening in your community that you got to change, or you're unhappy with the politics of your country. What's going on now? I mean, I see a lot of people right now, and by the way, I'm very involved in my world right now. But it's because I don't let it overwhelm me. I don't. So I love that quote because to me it's about you've got to keep moving forward. You've got to keep no matter what's happening in your life. And you've got to find some good in it.
Okay, that's really fascinating. Thank you so much for that. Let's circle back to social media. Where do you feel AI, or where do you think AI will play a role in the future? Is it going to be good or is it going to be bad? What do you think?
I think AI can be great. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go. I think bias can come out of it as long as at the end of the line there's always a human. I like to say that marketing will succeed at its best when humans control the machine.
Okay. So I want to talk about your book for a moment, which is The Age of Influence, Selling to the Digitally Connected Consumer. Some people maybe who are watching this haven't read it. So tell us about the book first and then why it became such a popular, big seller.
Well, everything I've written has come out of the base of Return on Relationship. That was the first book I wrote. I consider that my hub, where everything comes from. I haven't looked at when I digitally was a part of Return on Relationship. It became somewhat close with the age of it. Because I think everybody realizes now, back to your question, is that everybody is influenced. Like I said earlier, everyone influences someone. And as quickly as brands understand that, they'll understand that there are different types of influence. I believe at one level, what we call influence is really nothing. So you hire a celebrity, they talk about your product, or Andy McDowell gets on TV and talks about oil. Does anyone really believe he's on top? No, but they are going to sit there with a pretty face, someone they admire, talk about something, and they're going to pay attention. They're not going to turn the ad off or look at it. They're going to get out. Then you work your way down to people that people want to be like, whether it's a YouTube star or an Instagram influencer, and they love the way they dress, they want to look like them. But to me, and I think the biggest part of being an influencer is about being your friends the biggest. That's where people really probably want something to call one of your friends. You know, reviews are great. But then you say, hey, what do you need? I love the way you look. I love the car you're driving. I like it. So I think that most of the things that we buy now talk to other people about their lives way more than we did in the past. And that information is available every single day and every single minute. And I think companies have to pay attention.
Okay, so let's say that somebody wants to get into social media. They've been influenced by you and other marketers out there. What would you tell somebody if they wanted to build a career in social media marketing?
Well, if they want to build a career, I think that they've got to get the first job. I think they've got to start. A great advantage today is you don't have to go to the library and research old articles and find books. You know, your computer. I think anybody who wants to be in the space needs to understand how to use the space. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes happening now. I can't tell you how many people who have social media titles, vice president, director, manager, when I ask them, you know, I can't find anything about you in social media, they go, oh, I don't do that stuff. You know, I don't put my stuff online. How can you do it for your company if you don't understand it for yourself? You don't have tools. I mean, look, there's a lot of new platforms out there that I'll go out and try. I don't necessarily end up using them, but if they start, I go out and I try it. You know, I want to see, I use TikTok now. Am I on there? Am I using it a lot? No, but I get alerts. I want to see what other people are posting. I want to see if you don't use the site yourself, so I think you have to build a presence. It's not about building a large presence. It's about getting out there and getting enough followers and following enough people that you can engage. And by the way, you don't even need followers to engage. You just follow people and start commenting on their posts, sharing their tweets, you know, watching other people. To me, that's the most important thing. And then you need to get a job and go out and do it. I mean, sure, that don't get me wrong. By the way, I'm one of the guys that believes in college. I'm not telling people not to go to college. I think college is incredibly important. And one of the reasons I think it's important is you're learning how to. It's not about the test. It's not about the courses you're taking necessarily. It's about, first of all, it's about growing up. It's about living with other people. It's about being out there without oversight from your parents or your teachers, because most professors are not giving that oversight in college. It's about learning how to, I used to say to my daughters, you're learning how to learn, because that's a talent. I mean, I went to an Ivy League college. I went to Cornell. I don't really believe when I went to Cornell, I knew how to learn. I think it was, high school came too easy to me. I wasn't pushed into other things. But one of the things I learned the most at Cornell and when I got out was how to learn, how to get out there and get information. It was a lot tougher then. Now it's all available and in front of you.
Yeah, it is. So where do you see yourself going in the next couple of years? Last question.
Oh, isn't that a good question? It's part of the reason I'm on this road trip and away for the next 6 weeks. I'm trying to figure out exactly where things are going. So I have certain things I'm involved in. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the CMO of a company called Photofy, and I'm a partner in the company. I own equity. My business partner, John Andrews, is really the brains of that thing. I'm the kind of guy that goes along and helps him spread his message. He'll tell sometimes, but you know, John is a thought leader. He's a retail geek. He's a shopper marketer. So I'm very involved in that, and I will be for the next few years. We're trying to, again, we build collective bias. We help companies build content at scale using bloggers. Now we're helping companies build content at scale using their employees. So I'm very involved in that. I'm very involved in evangelizing that. The companies have to start, we've been talking about that a lot here today. They have to start freeing up their employees to help them create content, to be involved.
Yes.
Communication, to scale their communication and their engagement with customers by empowering their employees to do that. So I think I'll be very involved in that in the next few years. For the last 6 years, I was emceeing and hosting brand innovator conferences around the country. So That just ended after 6 years.
Mhm.
So it comes to your question. So I'm all of a sudden, I'm not going to be on the road every 2 weeks, flying to another destination in the States or outside to run these conferences. So I need to figure out where that time's going to go. So I think some of it's going to go towards working with Photofy. So I'll be spending a lot more time in Raleigh, which is where Photofy is based and my business partner lives. I'm very
Mhm.
lucky. I have a room they call Ted's room at their house. I have a couple of dresser drawers. I have a closet full of clothes, so I can go back and forth there or go there from anywhere without having to bring additional things. I call John Andrews my business soulmate. So I'm very fortunate because we just connect. We know how to work with each other. When we're together, ideas flow. And we also love each other as buddies, like we say, brother from another mother. So it's a really wonderful relationship. So I think I'll be spending more time in Bali and more time not only evangelizing that brands have to empower their employees, but working with John directly on Photofy. I did a lot of that the last 6 years on the board of Dynamic Signal, but Dynamic Signal is more about sharing company content or
Okay.
sharing articles that are pre-approved by the company and then building communication within the company so that employees talk to each other, whereas Photofy is more about empowering employees to share content they're creating for the brand. So I think I'll be doing a lot of that, and I've been trying to figure that out. Am I going to spend more time at home? Am I going to write more? Am I going to do more consulting? Am I going to start? I keynote around the country. I
Mhm.
probably, I probably do 10 keynotes at corporate and at social media events around the country. I might expand that, which I've always just waited for those to come to me. I might start seeking more of them out. That's something that we're going to figure out over the next few months. So thank you for making me think about it again.
You're welcome. And thank you, Ted, for taking the time for this interview. I think our audience is really going to appreciate the insights you provided. And yeah, thank you again for your time.
Well, I want to make sure to leave your audience with a couple of thoughts to take forward.
Okay, sure.
So one of them is something that I talk about all the time. You might have mentioned earlier, I don't remember, but always remember that relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become. So if you let them lie, the value diminishes. So touch base with people, reach out to them. When somebody reaches out to you haven't spoken to in a long time, instead of just replying back, go to their Facebook page, go to their LinkedIn page, see what's happening in their life so you have things to talk about with them that are relevant to them. And then another thing I want to make sure people talk about networking a lot. And
Mhm.
I used to think it was networking that I did, but I learned that what I really am is a community builder. I bring people together. So I like to say that a network gives you reach, but a community gives you power. Networks connect, communities care. So be a community builder.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Ted. And thank you again for your time.
My pleasure. It's really been a pleasure, Nicole. I appreciate you reaching out, and thank you for working around my schedule.
Of course. All right. Thank you.
Oh, and don't forget, everybody, if we're still being recording, be good to people.
Yes. All right.